All right, so we got a bunch of follow-up this time. Let's jump into this right away, and I'll try to crank through this quick so that this doesn't become a follow-up episode and we do actually get to today's book.
There's some days I think we need to do one of those where it's just a follow-up of the follow-up.
Well, this one could definitely be that because I volunteered to do the brainwash last time, and that is a full 10-day thing, 8 if you cut out the last 2 steps, which is what I did. I got done recording that episode with you. I mentioned I'm going to try to do one of these a day, basically the way that they wanted me to do it, but I was not going to follow all their suggestions. So I will go through quickly what I did for all of these, and you can kind of tell me if you think I qualify for following the brainwash program or not.
Okay.
Actually, first thing that I did, which made this really awesome, by the way, I put it all into Rome Research. So I had the page for the brainwash process, and then each of those bullets I just made due on a specific day, and that made it really easy. Like when I opened it up in the morning, like, oh yeah, I got to do that one today.
Real quick, you should know this. I have a page in my bullet journal, in the index even, titled What It Would Take to Get Me on Rome.
Really?
And I have started collecting what Rome would have to do to change their system that would get me to actually use the tool. And I think this is going to end up being a webinar at some point. So I don't know if it's solid for a webinar, but it's a thing I'm collecting thoughts on. We'll see.
This is awesome. I can't wait to see this. All right. Well, without further ado, day 1, the digital detox. By far the biggest action item in Brainwash. They had a whole big list of things, which I condensed into a couple things that I actually did. So number 1, I went through every single device and looked at my notifications. So my Mac, my iPad, and my iPhone. Notifications are completely off on my iPad. That is my creating device. I do not want to get anything on my iPad.
Okay.
And I thought that I had notifications tuned pretty good on my Mac and my iPhone too, but I basically just took a whole bunch of stuff out of Notification Center that was allowed, and basically now only the essential stuff is there. So even things like I mentioned last time, I've got this Bluetooth water bottle that has like the little spinny thing on the bottom.
Yep.
The lights glow and they tell you, hey, it's time to drink water. That's actually worked really well. That's relating to another part of the brainwash. But I turned off the notifications for the phone on that even though I want to know those things, I just am relying now on the light going on the water bottle. So no more notifications. I deleted probably over half of the apps that were on my phone.
Interesting.
Not because I ever used them. I mean, my phone, also on here, I redesigned my home screen. And I think I mentioned this a little bit last time, but I kind of dialed it in even further. So I've got my widgets in the Today view. And here I've got my series suggestions. I've got a couple mindfulness things. So the meditation thing, the mood notes, a little widget for how close I am to reaching my daily water intake goal, my batteries, activity stuff. Reader has a widget, so that actually pulls in like a news feed of my RSS feeds, which is the only thing I'm relying on for news anymore, which
Nice.
That alone has made a big impact.
Yep.
Then on the main screen, I've got some widget smith stuff. I've got like a text thing that says create, not consume. So that's like the main thing I see when I open this, like, hey, idiot, don't play in the infinity pools.
Yep.
And then on the other side, I've got all of the timery stuff, which I know I can do more with this, but it's basically the running timer, total log, and then a bunch of pre-made timers.
Got it.
Everything else is in the app library. But even with that, I went through and deleted over half the apps that were on my phone. So it is really just culled down now to the essential stuff. Same thing with the Mac, with the notifications. I also did a little bit with the applications, but on the Mac, that doesn't really bug me so much. There's a lot of one-off, I use these every once in a while applications on my Mac, and they're pretty much all intentionality focused. I typically don't have like games and time-wasty stuff on my Mac.
Right.
So I did all that stuff, and then I watched The Social Dilemma. And that just kind of like cemented all this stuff in my brain.
Yep. Yep.
In The Social Dilemma, by the way, there's a guy who wrote a book, 10 Reasons to Quit Social Media Right Now or something. And as they were talking about that guy, I was ordering the book on Amazon.
Yeah.
And then they interviewed the guy, and I was like, oh boy, did I make a mistake?
Yep.
I forget his name. He's a weird looking dude, though.
Was he the guy that's got like the dreadlocks going on all the way down? Is that the guy you're talking about?
Yep.
Kind of the hippie looking dude.
Exactly. Yeah, I forget his name, but I've got that book too as a get book, hopefully sometime in the near future. So that's Digital Detox. How'd I do?
Sounds like you did pretty well. As you were going through that, I had to remember, oh yeah, notifications come through on the Mac. I forgot about that because way back when they introduced the notification center on the Mac, I turned on the Do Not Disturb to where it starts at 11:59 and ends at midnight. So it is only allowing notifications for 1 minute in the middle of the night. I completely forgot about notifications on. So when you're talking about trimming notifications on the Mac, I'm like, wait, what? When did that come out? Oh, right. I've turned all that off for years now.
There you go.
Completely forgot about it. But yes, it's fascinating. I would love for you to take some screenshots of these home screens, these screens, and share them. That would be sweet if you could do that. I don't know if that's sensitive, what you have there.
Yeah, no, there's nothing sensitive on there. I actually have some taken. I'm working on a post for the Suite Setup, which will walk through this stuff.
Oh, perfect.
So I'll probably publish that and then link to it. Maybe not
Sweet.
by the time this episode goes up, but I will be sharing that shortly.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next day, and these will go a lot quicker. Day 2, practicing empathy through gratitude. And there are 2 parts to this. One is a true action item. Write down 5 things that I'm thankful for, which I did that, again, in Rome Research. Yeah, and then the other part is to thank someone every day. I've been trying to do this. This one is hard for me. I don't really think about this very often, so I know this is something that I need to keep coming back to. But the big part of this, which is take action now, write down the 5 things I'm thankful for, did that. So I think I'm 2 for 2 so far.
Good job.
Number 3, nature therapy, getting outside for at least 30 minutes a day. I have been doing this. I have been running outside and actually biking because it's not snowing quite yet. It's really close. It's really cold, but I am still getting outside. And I intend to keep doing this even through the winter. I'm sure there will be days when I'm just not feeling it because there's 30 mile an hour winds and it feels like negative 60. That does happen.
Yep.
But I want to make that the exception, not the rule. And I think I got the gear in order to do that.
Yeah, I saw that Isaac Smith was trying to go running. I think it was yesterday morning, and got up and realized it was super windy and decided, nope, not for me. And I'm like, oh, come on, that's minor.
Yeah, see, I've been pushing through that stuff because there have been those days when it's like, don't want to go. Part of one thing that helps with this, by the way, is there's a path kind of by my house, and I've been taking my dog lately. She can make it about 4 miles. So when I go for a shorter run, she comes with me. She gets so excited, getting ready to go. She basically like watches me putting on my gear and watches me stretching, and she's kind of like 5-6 feet away, just staring at me, And then when I walk over to where her leash is, like she starts going nuts.
Yes,
because it's kind of like this question, like, do I get to come this time or do I not get to come this time?
Do I get to go? Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
So you get your dog all excited. You go outside. She's pulling you off the porch. Then it's a lot easier to just follow through and do it, even if it's windy. Than if you step out there by yourself and you're like, maybe I'll go back inside.
Sure. Yeah. Nice.
So 3 for 3.
Doing good so far.
Number 4, figuring out food. What they had said was more, the big things for me were eat more single ingredient food and have at least 1 meal per day be entirely plant-based. Okay, so I'm all in on the eating more single ingredient food, and talked to Rachel about this. She does all the grocery shopping. She's on board with it too. So basically, as she's doing the meal planning, this is something that we're trying to do. The other one is where I have a little bit of an issue because I do intermittent fasting. My first meal is at 11 and then I eat dinner at like 5 or 6. Those are the only 2 meals I get in a day.
Okay.
I'm also running or biking every single day. So the thought of just eating a salad without any meat in it is not very appealing to me. So I have compromised, and I have been basically eating like chicken salad for at least one meal every single day, basically this whole week. And that, I think, gets me 80% of the way there.
Okay.
Because I typically would never eat a salad.
Sure.
I'm a meat and potatoes kind of guy. So just applying the intentionality, like, hey, one meal per day, this is what I'd like to eat, and then Rachel's kind of doing the same thing. Then that has actually worked. I will allow you to either grant me the point for that one or not.
I think I'll give it to you just because you're at least making the effort. I think I would die if I went without a meal. So the idea of skipping a meal like every day is just like
exactly. So then I've been doing it for years now, and I like it because you're really focused in the morning. You can crank out a bunch of writing, and then about 11 o'clock, you're like, I am starving. And at that point, just eating a bunch of leaves is not appealing.
Well, if you compare that, every morning I have a slice of sourdough toast with peanut butter on it, 2 eggs, and a sardine and a half. So I do eat sardines in the morning. I'm one of these weird guys who do that. And that's my breakfast every morning. So it's a fairly substantial breakfast. And the concept of skipping breakfast every morning, no.
Yeah, that's fine. But because I do, I get to lunchtime, which is the obvious candidate for this meal, because we're all going to eat dinner together, and the kids aren't going to just eat salad.
Right.
I needed to modify it a little bit. So I did, and this seems to be working. I actually like this a lot.
The chat's not terribly thrilled with my sardine eating.
Me either.
For what it's worth, I can't do the ones with the bones and the skin on it. I have to do the ones that have all that removed.
Ugh.
That's what I have to do.
Reminds me of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Baby Brent. Oh!
Okay. Sardines aren't for everyone. My apologies.
All right. So the next one is successful shut-eye. This has been something that we've talked about over and over on the podcast, the topic of sleep.
Yeah.
I've kind of dialed this in, but I did kind of review everything regarding my nighttime routine and my sleep setup for this. And so just some of the things that we've done, we've got a weighted blanket on our bed. We've got blackout curtains. We've got like white noise that we play every night. We've kind of got like our nighttime routine down where, unless I am reading a book for Bookworm and taking notes in my note on my iPhone, I'm trying not to be looking at screens, stuff like that. So I feel like this is pretty good. Day 6, embracing exercise. There's 2 parts to this. One is the exercise itself, 30 minutes of exercise per day. I've been nailing that since mid-March.
Yeah.
But another part of this was exercising with others, which I have never really done, other than a handful of times with my brother going for a run or a bike ride or whatever.
Sure.
But because of this brainwash, I now have somebody from my church that I go running with every Saturday morning.
Okay.
So I have made a routine now. We've done it 3 times, I think.
Nice.
We're going to go again this Saturday. And yeah, so I've got a routine now of exercising with someone, which is way more fun than doing it by yourself.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not doing CrossFit. Sorry, Awful Otter.
The thing I just connected, as I'm looking through this, because I didn't realize this when you were on day 3, the nature therapy side of it, but you're doing 2 of these essentially in one step, like it's duplicated with the exercise with the run outside. You're kind of doubling up there, which is probably a smart way to do that.
Kind of. The way I implemented this, though, I was tackling that specific thing for that day. So on nature therapy day, I made sure that I got outside. And then obviously you want to turn it into a routine.
Right.
But on day 3, basically, I was making sure I got outside. Day 6, embracing exercise, this happened to land on a Saturday. So I made sure that I lined up this running thing, and then we've kind of figured out now in the last couple days that, yeah, we want to keep this going even through the winter. So
nice. And then as I'm looking at day 7 here, the title that you wrote down is Medicate with Medication.
Oh, sorry, meditation.
Which is the only reason I had to point it out.
Yep. I was making this outline last night after not sleeping super great the night before. Even though I had dialed in my successful shut-eye, still some days it doesn't happen.
Yep, it does happen sometimes.
Yes, you found my typo. I started this with Headspace because I have always liked Headspace. I've got the subscription already, yada, yada, yada. However, in redesigning my home screen, I had the Headspace widget set up on my Today view, and you cannot customize that widget. It just takes you to the stupid daily video that they do. That's not what I want. I want today's Headspace or whatever they call it.
Right. Whatever.
And you can't go straight to that. It loads the video and you got to flip through like the 5 different screens. And I'm like, well, this is annoying. I wonder if 10% Happier links straight to the daily meditation, which it does.
Yep.
So I downloaded that. As soon as I downloaded it, I got an offer to resubscribe at 40% off or something for the year.
Nice.
So even though I have the Headspace subscription, I felt like I could justify giving 10% Happier a shot. And I've done that now the last 4 days, 5 days, 4 days.
Okay.
And I like it a lot. The one thing I don't like about 10% Happier is that sometimes the daily meditations begin at 10 minutes, which I would prefer, at least at the beginning, a shorter interval. The 5 minute is kind of the sweet spot for me. But oh well.
Yeah, I know that they do that intentionally. Like I know that they spent quite a bit of time talking about that because it was one of the meditations where they do like a coaching thing and then they get into the actual guided meditation on most of those.
Yep.
And there was one of them that I went through where Dan Harris was talking about designing the app and how they decided to do certain things. I wish I could remember which one of those it was. And he called out, like, we thought about making it you be able to choose the number of minutes you wanted to do this, but then they decided they were going to put at this minimum of 10 because they were seeing the research shows that that's the minimum you need to do to get the benefit. So,
sure.
It doesn't really help people when they're trying to get into it at the very, very beginning, trying to do something shorter just to build the habit. It doesn't really help in that scenario. So that's my complaint with it, actually. I've liked 10% for a long time, but I don't like that they force that restriction. I'm fine with it now, but if you were just starting, I think it makes it a little bit harder to get into it.
I concur, but that's okay. I've been able to stick with it, and I do like the meditations that they have in there. They are very non-spiritual, which maybe sounds kind of weird, but that's what I want from my meditation app. I just want to train my brain. I want no one's opinion about where this should be going spiritually. Let me take care of that side.
Right. It's like that you kind of have to be particular with your terms when you're using meditation versus mindfulness versus transcendental meditation. Like, you got to be careful when you use those three because, they are different. So
exactly. And then the last one, day 8, strong bonds, spend at least 10 minutes connecting. This one has been hard for me too. The day that this happened, I was able to do this. I actually taught my oldest son how to time block.
Nice.
It was kind of a spontaneous thing, and he was working on his schoolwork, and I don't know how it came up, but I'm like, hey, you want me to show you how to do this? He's like, yeah. So it took about 10 minutes. It was just him and I at the kitchen table. Everybody else was downstairs doing their schoolwork already. So that was pretty cool. But I have a real hard time making this a habit. Just like the other one that was hard for me is reaching out to somebody and thanking them every day.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is so hard for me, but it is. So I don't know. I feel like technically I completed this one, but I don't feel like I really did, if that makes any sense. I feel like I got more work to do here.
Yeah. And that's fair.
But that's fair. My brainwash.
Do you feel clean?
So clean.
So then the question is, day 9 and 10 are reflect on it and set up the next whatever, which you didn't talk about. So reflecting on those 8 days, as part of that, do you feel like going through those 8 days, you came out on the other end much better and better prepared to build new routines? Or do you feel like it was just enacting things that you've been doing in the past and it just gave you an excuse to focus on one of the already existing habits that you have? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like it helped me dial in some things, and some of the specifics that they had shared kind of brought some ideas for things that I would not have come up with myself.
Sure.
Like the salad once a day. I can see myself doing that for the foreseeable future. And I think that long term that will have some health benefits for me. I don't think you notice that the first day that you have a salad.
Yes. Yes.
But it's also kind of been turned into a little mini habit already, and that happened quicker than I thought it was going to.
Sure.
So really all I needed was like a little bit of a kick in the pants to get that going. I didn't do like the full on retrospective, now plan how you're going to continue to do this stuff, because I wanted to just basically try what they were telling me to do. And then from there, identify what, if anything, I need to modify in terms of adjustments. I think the thing that I take away from this is that there is some stuff that I've dialed in. There's some stuff that I was doing well already before, like the running and exercising. There's some stuff that it's refined, like the running with other people, which I want to continue to do. There's some stuff that they had me go through once, which are going to provide a benefit, like deleting all the apps and turning off all the notifications on my devices.
Yep.
And then there's stuff that, like, it's obviously this is an area where I need to work on, like thanking somebody every day and developing the strong bonds. And I'm not quite sure what I want to do with those yet.
Sure.
I don't want to commit to like, I'm going to call somebody every single day. I guess, I should probably have like a follow-up item. I'm like, what did you finally decide with this? But I'm kind of mulling this over right now and trying to figure out where this fits for me.
Sure.
But overall, I'm glad that I did it. It definitely was a lot of work, but took one for the team and glad I got through it.
Good job. Proud of you. I was not about to do this. So I'm grateful that one of us decided to do it so that we could figure out and have an opinion on whether or not it was worthwhile or not. So good job.
You could say you weren't motivated to do a brainwash.
You could say I was very unmotivated to do a brainwash. That's definitely true. And now I know why.
Yes, that leads us to today's book, which is The Motivation Code by Todd Henry. A book about motivation, which is not at all what I thought it was. There are 3 parts to this, because if you're going to write a productivity book, you must have 3 parts.
Yes.
Part 1 is what drives you. Part 2 is all of the motivational themes. And part 3 is now what, that is the application of what he's talking about. Part 1, what drives you, is probably where the discussion is going to happen. There is an assessment that he gives you access to in this section. And then part 2, that's basically a description of all of the different 27 areas that you may be identified as in the assessment. Part 3, where you actually apply what you've learned, and not a whole lot there. The majority of this book is these motivational themes, which he breaks down into families, talks about the good traits, the shadow side traits, the ways to work with someone who is this type of thing, and the situations in which they thrive. So I think we should talk a little bit about this first part, and then maybe dive into the results of the assessments after giving just a real brief overview of the different families. Definitely not going into all 27 of the possibilities, but there's some commonalities between these families, which maybe would be helpful before we share our stuff and what families they fall into.
Sure. I will say this is, as I was preparing for today's recording, the way this is all set up, and there's so many different potential motivators here, I'm planning to just reference each thing in the book as we go through this. I normally don't do that. Like, I normally flip through and look at 1 or 2 things here and there, but in this particular case, I'm very likely to need this thing open the whole time. And it's because there's so many little tiny details about each one of them. This is one of these books that's crazy dense as far as the information for the number of words in the book. So it's like, you probably have an upper hand on me now because you've got all this in your MindNode file now. And I'm like, I'm not going to rewrite all this stuff down. It's in the book. I'm just going to keep the book open. So just be aware, if you hear me flipping pages, that's what I'm doing.
Well, therein lies a tale, because that is how I take notes. And that resulted in a crap ton of notes.
I figured. I wondered if this was going to be one of the massive MindNode files you've got.
This one took forever for me to get through because of all these stupid notes.
So then the question is, did you spend more time building your MindNode file than reading the book?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
Which is kind of what bugged me about this and why I entered it the way I did. This is totally not the right format for discussing this book, to be honest. This is like the Strengths Finder in a lot of ways, where you buy the Strengths Finder book and it's a summary of all of the different strengths, but you don't need to know all of the different strengths. You need to know what yours are and what you're going to do about them. So if you were to pick up this book and you're thinking, how do I get the maximum benefit from this? You read the first 20 pages, you take the assessment, you read your top 3 sections, not all 27, and then you read the end.
Yes.
So everybody else but Mike gets through this very quickly. But because I am dedicated to the Bookworm Club members... And I'm thinking in the back of my head, they're going to be expecting a MindNode file. You got to make it. I made it.
Good for you. I'm proud of you, Mike. I would not. Because I
wanted to give up. I wanted to just mail it in. I honestly did. There's so much.
I did not skim this. I will say that. However, I read the parts that don't apply to me very quickly in comparison to the parts that apply to me. Like, I was running through them very quickly, and it's like, yeah, I get it. That's not me. Ooh, that one is. Huh. I wonder if that's, yes. So I don't envy you in this case.
No, I don't envy me either.
Quick side note, because the chat's asking. The first part that we're getting ready to get into, what drives you, you go through that, then you take the assessment. The assessment is online.
Yep.
And we should point out that there's a free version of that, which is what I took. And it sounds like you took one of the paid versions of it to get the full spectrum. And as we were talking beforehand, I may want to go do the bigger one now.
Yeah, so we'll talk about those differences when we get to our results. But yeah, there is a free one. motivationcode.com/free, I think, is the free one. So what drives you? Real quickly here, this is where they discussed what I thought this book was going to be about.
Yeah.
Which is like why motivation matters. And chapter 1 specifically, unique motivation is the missing key. They kind of talk about how a lot of people, in fact, only 33% is the statistic that they shared, are actually engaged at work, which means 2/3 of the workforce are not engaged. I forget the scale that they use for that, but there's basically 2 different categories that fall into that 33%. So it is like everything below a certain threshold, which is kind of terrifying when you think about it. I had to go get tested for COVID yesterday because I was exposed, and I'm looking at the people behind the glass, and you can just tell they do not want to be there. And I'm like, I wish you were engaged in your work right now because I don't want to be here either.
Yes.
But I know they're volunteers, and yeah, like that was an interesting experience.
Yep. It's okay. So this is a point that's, I think, worth exploring here just a little bit, because I actually had to do a COVID test yesterday as well. We didn't talk about this. But
I know we were not together.
I did the mail-in version of this. So you go online and they send it to you. And I had to sit in a Zoom waiting room And then they come on and they walk you through the whole thing, and then you ship it back to them via UPS. But the gal that I had to do that with was like super energetic and bubbly, and was like, "Oh yeah, all you got to do is," and then she walked me through the whole thing. It's like, "Yep," and then you do this, and then like, okay, there's a line here of being good at your job and being willing to help, and holy cow, you're so bubbly, you're going to drive me nuts. Like, like there's a line there. Sometimes you need to scale that back.
Well, I can tell you from my experience, there were no bubbles in the room.
Yeah, that's fair.
It was just weird. I mean, there's so much fear attached to everything COVID.
Yeah.
So you walk in there and the whole room just feels
somber.
Yeah, exactly. So interesting experience. But anyways, like I had a real life example of people who were not engaged or actively disengaged with their job because they did not want to be there.
Right.
So that's like why this stuff matters, is that a lot of people aren't engaged with their work. And he kind of lays out the argument that the reason that they're not is that they're not motivated. Well, why aren't they motivated? It's because maybe their work is trying to motivate them with things that aren't motivating to them as an individual. That's where he presents this idea of the motivation code, understanding your top 3 motivators, and then kind of jumping to the end. What you want to do is build your work life around these motivators so that you're motivated to do your work. Makes sense, right?
So far, so good.
The one thing I want to call out from this section, which I really appreciated, is that all the science behind the assessment that they outline is actually online. So if you want the science, you can go get it. But if you don't even have to see it.
Yep. It doesn't even have to be in the book. We don't have to print it.
Yep.
It made me wonder if they did that so that they could update the science over time. But
yeah, I'm sure that's a piece of it. That would make a lot of sense. The other problem with this, though, is that there is not a whole lot of science.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like a 12-page PDF or something. I looked it up last night. Now, also keep in mind, my background here, working with a family business that is an assessment company, and the amount of research that goes into the assessments that we've done is pretty staggering. It's not probably fair to hold other people to that standard, but just for comparison, the core assessment in the emotional intelligence stuff, which I had you go through when we did the emotional intelligence book, that single assessment has 140 doctoral level papers and books that have been written on it, and it has been used over 8.5 million times.
Sure.
This one was like, this one study talked about this thing, and this other one said that thing, the end.
So in your mind, you're like, so is this thing valid? That's probably
exactly.
What's going through your mind. Sure.
Now, I don't think the average person would have any questions about the validity of this, and I understand it takes time to develop the science behind it, and I feel like that's kind of the stage that they're in right now.
Yep.
They've got their hypothesis, they've shared what they have in this book based on the science and the research that they've already done, but I feel like this is going to evolve and grow over time, and maybe it ends up being something like the Strengths Finder, where this is just like another one of those assessments that everybody's heard about. I feel like that's where Todd Henry wants it to get to.
Right.
I'm not sure it will, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Having gone through it, and just the little free version that I went through has me rethinking a lot of things at the moment. It's like, wait, what? So I have lots of questions to send to myself on this. So I'm curious when we get to the end of this, how action items pan out.
All right. I think that's all I really want to talk about in that first section. He talks about the motivational families, which we'll go over in a second here. He also talks about the process for the assessment, which is a little bit different. You have to create these achievement stories, and you write basically 3 different stories in the assessment. And then after you've written those stories, you answer all the questions on a scale of 1 to 10, which, by the way, I'm not sure what device you did this on. If you did it on your phone, it's very easy to miss the not applicable button.
Oh, I did it on my Mac. So
okay.
I didn't have that issue because it was very obvious. It was because on the Mac, it showed the full scale, and then at the far right, it had the NA button. So it was pretty obvious when I went through it. So I take it that wasn't the case?
That was not the case when I took the free one. I just did the 1 to 10. And then when I did the paid one, I did it on my Mac and I saw the not applicable.
Sure.
So I got slightly different results both times, but I feel like the full one is actually more accurate and they are actually pretty similar.
Okay.
So having gone through it, I feel like the results are valid. You know, it's not something that was like off the wall, like, I don't understand that one.
Sure.
Well, everything they were telling me about myself was like, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. No, it has me curious. That's for sure. Because I just did the free one. But still, it took a good 20, 30 minutes.
Yep.
I think it was closer to 30 minutes to go through that. Because you have to come up with the story, and they even prep you. You're going to have to come up with 3 stories ahead of time. So start writing things down before you get to this. So it's actually longer than that if you start accounting for how much time you got to spend coming up with what these stories are.
Yep. Do you want to share any of your stories?
I was trying to use some very practical things for it. I was thinking back to like some things that because what they wanted to know, like what those stories are they're looking for are which times in your history have you felt the most satisfied with your activity in some form. And one of them that I wrote down was when we did our big worship in the parking lot event. You know, we were full lockdown at the time, and we did a drive-in event outside in the parking lot that was also live streamed with big screen and stuff. So I put that down because I had to pull together 4 different teams, and it took a ton of work to do. But when it was all said and done, I was in a spot where I was like, yes, we did a solid job. Like that was one of the more fulfilling things I've done. But I'm a techie. Like, everybody kept saying, oh, that would be so stressful. I was like, I could do this for a couple more hours. I'm good. Like, let's just run all of this super complicated technology for multiple hours and try to maintain my focus on 5 different things at the same time. I'm good for a few hours like that. So anyway, that was the main one that I was using for it.
The 3 that I used were self-publishing my first book.
Yeah.
I actually included publishing 100 plus episodes of Bookworm.
Got it. Yeah.
And running and finishing my first half marathon, and several actually since then.
Sure.
So those were the 3 that I used. And the 3 that you pick, they do ask you not just to write the stories, but at the end of the assessment, you got to rank them. Like which one was the most important to you, which is kind of interesting.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yep.
Cool. So let's real quickly go through part 2 here, the motivation themes and the different families. Like I said, we're not going to go through all of the different motivations because there are 27 of them. We wouldn't be able to talk about any of them in depth and give them the attention they deserve. So we'll go through the families and then our results and maybe talk about the specific ones that we got assigned.
That we resonate with. Sure.
Yep. So the first one's the visionary family, and some of the common characteristics with this: you're motivated to make an impact according to what's possible or ideal. You're fueled to turn ideas into reality, especially when you are the only one who thinks it's possible. You're able to spot the potential, and you're future focused, sometimes at the expense of the present. And then at the end of this chapter, they've got the summary where you form your collective, you pause and clarify, take time to dream, mind your ideals, be a supporter, not a detractor. Anything else about the visionary family?
I don't know about the visionary. I just want to point out that there's, whenever Todd goes through each of these, especially with the subsets. So in this case, one of those would be, you've got achieve potential, make an impact, and experience the ideal. Those are the 3 like subtypes underneath of this. And as he goes through those, he'll point out like, these are your strengths, but here's the shadow side. Like this is the stuff behind the scenes. These are the potential downfalls of this. I really, really appreciated that it wasn't just, here's what you're good at. It's like, yeah, but that means I suck at this.
Yep.
He at least points that out and shows, if you're working with someone with this type of motivation, here's what you should do. Like, here's how you help them. So I really appreciated that for sure. But yes, as far as like the achiever, or not achiever, that's the next one, the visionary family. When I was reading through this, well, I'm not going to say that. I'll wait till later. Teaser.
All right. I think you
Teaser
just foreshadowed maybe something from your results, but
possibly, because people call me a visionary regularly. So
all right.
There was a lot in this that I was like, oh, that's interesting. So yes, we'll come back to that.
Cool. So the next one's the achiever family. Common characteristics here: driven to persevere through challenges, motivated to overcome obstacles and oppose an enemy. You want to complete tasks even at the expense of eating and sleeping, and engaged when making progress. And then at the end, the summary: be aware of your stress level as you tend to take on too much at once. Maintain long-term goals, work on them patiently. Don't allow your ambition to outpace your experience. Bring others along as you pursue big, impressive projects.
So the 4 here, meet the challenge. It's what it sounds like. There's a challenge that's put before you. You want to overcome that, or you want to meet that, like achieve that thing. Thus, the achiever family. Overcome. That's why I had to change my word there. Overcome is when you have an obstacle that's put in your way and you want to beat that obstacle. So it's similar, but not quite the same. Bring to completion is just that. Like you have kind of a mission that's that you've likely given yourself, and you like completing projects. You're not necessarily one who starts them, but you like to complete them. And then advancing is like you're given something that exists. You find something that's off with it, and then you go and achieve advancing it forward. So all of those could have flavors, and like you could easily float from one to the other. That's why he groups these in families.
Yep.
So just know, like, there are these very tiny subtleties that he points out, but it's easy to move from one to the other for sure.
Cool. The next one is the team player family. The common characteristics: they derive energy from working with others toward a common goal. They're able to anticipate and meet the needs of others. They're willing to pick up extra work to help the team accomplish its objectives. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves or part of an elite group. And the summary: they've got a clear set of personal values that guide your decisions. You should monitor your true stress levels. You should be mindful of how the opinions of others might be influencing your mood. And you should shamelessly champion the causes that you believe in.
Yeah, and then the 4 themes, I guess is what he's calling these inside of that. The first of those is collaborate. So you really like working with other people, just as it sounds like. The second one is make the grade. And you're essentially trying to, the way he defines this, you're motivated to measure up to and gain acceptance in a group you want to be a member of. The third here is serve. You're motivated to identify and fulfill needs, requirements, and expectations. So this is one that I see a lot in volunteers at our church, that they'll have this particular motivator. Doesn't really matter what you ask them to do, just the fact that you've asked them to step up to the plate, they're more than willing to do that. And then influence behavior is exactly what it sounds like. You enjoy the process of trying to sway teams or groups from one thing to another. The way he defines it is you're motivated to gain a reaction or response from people that indicates you have influenced their thinking, feelings, and behavior. So again, you can kind of see how these can all move from one to the other.
Yep, they're all related. Next family is the learner family. These are motivated to explore, ask questions, and learn new things, driven to teach others what they've learned and share new skills. They prefer generalist roles where they can learn new things. They're able to bring a lot of new ideas and energy to projects, especially in the early stages. If you are in the learner family, you should recognize that not everyone is wired like you. You should develop a side project or hobby, make a bucket list, and consider the application of the knowledge that you are getting.
Yeah, and then the 4 sub-themes under this one. Not all of them have 4, but the last couple have had them. Comprehend and express. Your motivation focuses on understanding, defining, and then communicating your insights. So you like to figure out how something works and then tell other people what you're doing for it. That one I run into quite a bit, actually, with folks. Master. You like to gain complete command of a skill, subject, procedure, technique, or process. Just what it sounds like. You like to become the best at something. Demonstrate new learning. It's very similar to that first one of comprehend and express, but you're motivated to learn how to do something new and show that you can do it. So that one I actually had a hard time getting the difference between those two because they seemed like they were so on top of each other. that I had a hard time figuring out the subtleties there. And then the last one is explore. You're driven to explore what is unknown and perhaps mysterious to you, pressing beyond the existing limits of your knowledge and or experience. So you're just diving into something new.
Right. And you hit on one of the problems, I think, with this is that maybe the distinctions make sense to them, but they're not abundantly clear to everybody.
Yeah, and I think they try to explain like how these things differ, but I think unless you know all the details behind how their survey works, it would be very difficult to nail down what those differences actually are.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance.
So again, when you're reading through them, it's like, okay, you have a lot of the same strengths, you have a lot of the same weaknesses. Why are these different?
Yep, exactly.
So I don't know. I never did figure that particular one out.
All right, the next family is the optimizer family. And optimizers derive their energy from making things efficient. They want systems and information to be organized. They're focused on getting it right from the beginning rather than fixing it later. And they need to lay firm foundations for future work. They aren't concerned about being known for their contribution. If you are in the optimizer family, then you should learn to recognize when something is an actual problem versus a problem in your own mind. Recognize that others are not necessarily interested in improvement like you are. Practice allowing others to take ownership and to break your work into short-term, easy wins.
Yeah, this one's got a lot of sub-themes in it. The first of which is organize. I know some people who have this one, and I how do you do that? You want to set up and maintain a smooth running operation. I think the key here is and maintain. Like, it's not necessarily a thing you're going to just set up and then walk away from. They like to maintain it. Make it right. You consistently set up or follow standards, procedures, and principles that you believe are right. I feel like we see a lot of those in our culture right now. Improve. You're happiest when you're using your abilities to make things better. This one kind of overlaps, I think, with advance from the achiever group. So again, like, they don't even necessarily follow the families piece. Make it work. Your motivation focuses on fixing something that has broken down or is functioning poorly. Develop. You're motivated by the process of building and developing from start to finish. And then establish. You're motivated to lay secure foundations and become established. It always bugs me when people use a term to define the term. Let's call it establish and then say, and become established. Like, no. You can't do that.
I had the same thought. All right. Then the last one here is the key contributor family. Common characteristics here. They want to be the center of the action. They derive energy from being recognized for their contributions. They're driven to show how they're unique from everyone else on the team. They find motivation in growing their influence and ownership of teams and processes. And then the summary here, if you are in the key contributor family, you should recognize that your motivation is a gift. Apply your motivation to help others. Find your core team and recognize that some work just has to be done whether or not you want to do it.
Yep. And then again, there are 6 themes in this one as well. So you can get to see like what we're talking about. Sometimes these things overlap. It's partially because there's so many of them. The first of these is evoke recognition. You're motivated to capture the interest and attention of others. So this would be, your typical performers, people who like to be on stage. Bring control. You want to be in charge and in control of your own destiny. Hello, entrepreneurs. Be unique. You seek to distinguish yourself by displaying some talent, quality, or aspect that is distinctive and special. I feel like that would be like artists, maybe. Sometimes I'm trying to group people, and I probably shouldn't be doing that. Be central. You're motivated to be a key person who holds things together and gives them meaning and or direction. So that would be like the person calling the shots in a lot of cases. Gain ownership. You're motivated to acquire what you want and to exercise ownership or control over what is yours. That one I had a hard time nailing down how that was different than be central. Maybe it depends on if there are people around you. I don't know. That one I kind of struggle with. And then the last one here is excel. You want to stand above the rest, or at the very least, do your absolute best as you exceed the performance or expectations of those around you. So people set expectations for you. You want to beat those. There you go.
Yes. So that is the 6 different families and the different motivations inside each one. There is the assessment, which we both took. So let's dive into some of the specifics for the ones that are appropriate for us.
Okay.
Do you want to share your results first?
I want to say that, whenever I went to take this, that before I took it, I had a lot of stuff going on. So I had read the first 24 pages where they do that first section before they get into these families. And I had read through all of these different motivators. And there was like 2 days before I could take the assessment, just because so much stuff was going on in life. And I kept like in my mind I even took a note of what I thought some of mine were. And then I took the assessment and it's like complete backwards from what I expected it to be. So this is why I'm a bit dumbfounded right now with this, and I'm not real sure what to do with it. So when it comes to action items here, I don't really know what to do currently. So maybe I'll figure that out as we go here. But I was not expecting what I got from this. I'll say that.
Okay.
So, and it starts with the number 1. So the free version, what they do is they give you your top 3.
Yep.
The full one, it gives you all of them ranked, correct? Is that how that worked?
It does, and it gives you in-depth analysis on actually your top 5.
Okay. So all I have on my side is just what those themes are, those top 3. The top one that I have is collaborate.
Interesting.
Exactly. That was my thought. Like, wait, I've always known, or at least thought, that I was a very independent person and I always wanted to do things me. So as an introvert, I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do with that one? So then I'll go over here. I got to get myself up to that. But I was flipping through the specifics behind collaborate and was just kind of walking through, okay, here are the things that they're saying are the positives, and here are some of the watch outs. So there's 3 pieces here that like you're really, or I shouldn't say you're really good at, but they say for someone with collaborate that they're like your main aspects of this. And one of those is unable to win unless the group wins.
Yeah.
Eager for acceptance, and relationship driven. Those are the 3 themes within that theme. And as I was reading those 3, this is only about a page worth of information on those 3. So that's why I say this is a very dense book, because that whole section is like, oh, that's my theme. Come on, can you expand on that? Give me a little more. And I'm like, if you gave me a little more, this whole book would be 500 pages long. But as I was reading those, like, well, yeah, I suppose those are all spot on.
Interesting. So in the full version, what they give you in addition to a longer PDF is access to a web portal where they have videos for all of these as well.
Okay.
And most of the videos are like 5 to 10 minutes. I haven't looked at all of them yet, but they're pretty well done. And it would be cool to get your feedback on those videos, because I agree that just based off of what's in the book itself, you get your top 3 and you're looking at 3 of the 27 things, and it feels like there's not a whole lot of meat there for you sometimes.
Right. That actually makes me think this book is maybe a sales pitch then.
It totally is a sales pitch. I went into it thinking this is like or actually when we got to section 2, I'm like, this is basically StrengthsFinder.
Got it.
But I feel like the free one doesn't give you a whole lot of incentive to really want to upgrade.
Sure.
Like with the StrengthsFinder, you get the free one when you buy the book. You go through it, it gives you your top strengths. But for those strengths, at least they give you a lot more description. With the free one, it's just literally like, this is the thing.
Yeah.
And then you're left with 6 pages, maybe.
Yep.
In the actual part 2 of the book where they're describing who you are. And it really isn't clear that when you upgrade, you're going to get actually a very in-depth report with a bunch of additional follow-up steps to help you dial this in, and a whole bunch of multimedia that's going to help you understand it better. Like, that's all missing.
Yeah, because when I took the free one at the very end, they said, hey, if you want to see all of these ranked, you can upgrade and we'll give you the full. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, all I really care about is the top.
So I get one more page with the rest of them listed in order. Like,
it's not worth that to me. So
exactly. I don't think they do a very good job of giving you a taste for what is in the full version.
Sure. Yeah, so it's a sales pitch, but a bad one at that.
Yeah, kind of.
Which is interesting. But I will say, like, coming back to collaborate, one of the pieces is, and this is why I brought this up earlier, the shadow side, so the back side of this is the part where I noticed this fits spot on, and I was not prepared for this. But the sub-themes here, they find it easy to self-deprecate. If you've followed me for very long, I do this all the time. I'm a constant self-deprecator. I do it frequently. They can lose their individual identity. It's easy for me to identify with whatever group I'm a part of. I do this constantly. Prone to taking on too much. They can judge those who are independent. I don't know that I do this one a lot, but I've noticed it internally. I don't think I've externalized that, but I notice it internally. They're reluctant to confront issues or engage in necessary conflict. Totally. I am opposite of Mike in this.
So everybody knows that that's not me then.
Yes. So I'm like, okay, when I was going through this in my head, I was thinking, okay, these three families and these, rough themes underneath of those, this is kind of what I was thinking. And then this comes out at the top and I'm reading through all of this like, yes, 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 yes. I don't see myself as someone who seeks out teams to be a part of, but
yeah. Well, that's really the beauty of this assessment. If it's working the way it's designed, is you probably have never been in a place where that was like a core motivator, and you've just kind of adapted to whatever is there.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you get a look inside yourself and you realize, oh, this is the biggest lever I can pull in order to create motivation to show up every day.
Yep.
So then you go back and you think about how you might be able to redesign aspects of your work.
Yeah. Now, I'm not really sure how to do that because it's like, okay, you can only put teams around things for so many opportunities. So I don't know. It's got me thinking a lot about like, okay, well, I've got like Analog Joe. Like, well, there's kind of a team with the members who are on Team Analog there. There's Bookworm and the folks who are around it. Like Bookworm kind of fits because you and I work together on this. So it kind of fits in that grouping. So I get that, but I'm like, I don't know. It's so weird. So weird. Makes me wonder if that's why I failed at the whole self-employed thing. But I don't know.
It could be. Now, also, this is your top motivator, right? So there's
Correct.
two other ones here. And one of the points that they make is that while this is the primary one, it's going to be influenced by the others on your list. So basically, this is going to come together to create a Franken motivation that is uniquely Joe.
They're like modifiers, I think is the way they explain it. Is like your number 2, 3, 4, 5 modify your top.
Yep.
And back and forth for sure.
Right.
What was your number 1?
My number 1 is Meet the Challenge. So this one, the report that I have says your sense of achievement comes in looking back over a challenge you've met or a test that you've passed. You come alive under the pressure of specific demands. You stretch yourself to succeed in the face of tight deadlines, problems, competitive situations, or tests of skill, understanding, or endurance. You may set the challenge yourself. It may come to you as an assignment. It might arise in the course of activities on the job. Regardless of the source, you enjoy focusing your energies and abilities on meeting the demands of the challenge makes upon you. Being involved from the time the challenge first arises down to the moment it is finally conquered is important to you. As you leave each demand or difficulty behind you, you feel stimulated to press on. You must, however, have a sense that you are making continuing progress toward the goal. Getting sidetracked by unrelated matters or thrown off by a change in plans or assignments is likely to annoy you.
Yep.
That was pretty accurate.
This is why Mike pushes me so hard to make sure we've got a schedule and that we're on time and all the things.
Yeah.
Maybe this is why Bookworm continues. It's because you've got this drive and I want to be a team player. So
yeah, maybe. One of the shadow sides of this, and actually, I don't know if you want to keep going back and forth, but a lot of mine are linked, and the common theme with these is the tendency to put yourself in a position of stress. So like one of the shadow side attributes here, putting things off to the last minute, waiting till the pressure builds up, needing that pressure and risk to create a challenge, adrenaline rush, pushing yourself too far beyond your existing abilities and skill level, living with a high degree of stress by constantly taking on fresh challenges. That's all great in moderation, but it can also get me in trouble, and I've definitely been there.
Sure. Don't do that.
Right.
Like I tell my kids, don't do that. It hurts. When they stub their toe or whatever.
Yeah, apparently I need a little bit of pain in order to get going. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So
there we are.
I'll inflict pain on you in the future. My number 2 was be central. And I thought this was interesting given number 1 is collaborate. So being a team player, it comes from the team player family. And number 2 is be central, which is coming from the key contributor family. And if I look at the be central themes, it's excited to be close to the action, which totally makes sense when you think about me running events. Like I'm the one that I want to play tech producer, and I want to be the one who's keeping an eye on what's the video team doing, what's the slide team doing, what's the sound team doing, is my executive pastor on stage when they're supposed to be, the band's supposed to be coming off on the side. Like I like to manage all of that. I don't know why. It's just the way I'm wired. So I like to be close to the action. I like to be called upon first. Power hungry. Is that one fitting? Maybe critical to the success of the team. But here's the flip side of it. This shadow side. They can easily burn out or overextend themselves. So combine that with the collaborate one, where you have a tendency to take on too much.
Yeah,
that's fitting. They must be asked or called upon before taking action, which is so true. I tend to not just go do something unless there's someone needing help in some form, or there's something that I need to contribute in that case. They seek reinforcement of their values. I don't really resonate with that one specifically. I'm not really sure that one applies, but it's interesting nonetheless. So again, I think this is, if you talk about the modifier piece, if being central ties into that team player, it makes me think like, okay, well, I need teams around me and I want to be the one who ties them all together, which is kind of where I'm sitting right now. So
sure.
I don't know. It's again, this is not one I expected. I'm going to talk about the ones I expected in a bit.
All right.
But that is not, it was not on my radar at all. Neither one of these, collaborate or be central, wasn't on my radar at all. I thought those were towards the bottom of the list. So when I took the results and they came up, I sat there and stared at it for a while, and I debated retaking the test because I thought they'd sent it to me wrong. That's how far off I thought this was.
Did you have Becky read the sections that you got back?
I haven't yet. No, I haven't processed it well enough, I think, for that. So
I had Rachel do that last night.
Okay.
And basically that was a verification for me because she's reading through it and she's like, I get it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Like, okay, I guess those are accurate then. Sometimes you can't judge yourself very well, but others who know you pretty well can verify it.
No, that's a solid thought because I haven't. Again, I'm still trying to process it, which is weird. I'm a super fast processor with stuff like this. I mean, how many times have we talked about I tend to not figure out what I'm going to say at the beginning of Bookworm until you've said 3, 2, 1, and then the thought crosses my mind in that moment. So that's just how I operate. So for me to be a bit, and this was, I took the test about a week ago now, and I still am like trying to, like this past week, I've been trying to pay attention to my interactions at work, trying to like, okay, how does this all apply? And I haven't really found anything that refutes it.
Yeah.
which is the weird part. I found a lot of things that confirm it, and I don't know. It's so weird. So kudos on Todd Henry here.
Well, I can tell you, you are a central collaborator for Bookworm.
Linux machine for the win.
All right. My second one is experience the ideal. So the first one is from the Achiever family. This one is actually from the Visionary family. And my report says you're motivated to give concrete expression to certain concepts, visions, or values that are important to you. You want to live out your ideas and ideals and to measure up to a self-image or role you adopt or are cast in. These intangibles take a variety of forms, perhaps your political beliefs, morals, spiritual values, philosophical outlook, or your attitudes towards work, or what you seek to live out with intensity and purpose. It's likely that your lifestyle, occupation, place of residence, the people with whom you want to associate, and the nature of your relationships with others reflect these concepts. In general, you want your life to reflect as closely as possible to the way you think it should be lived and your actions to reflect the kind of person you think you ought to be. The process of striving to realize these ideals may be what gives you satisfaction and pleasure. It is important for you to concentrate on functioning in a role, assignment, or responsibility that involves you in a process of transforming what is intangible or abstract into some concrete form or expression. Again, I feel like this is very accurate. What do you think?
This is spot on.
Yep. Some of the shadow sides here. Idealism or romanticism leading to frequent disappointments. Yep. I can't even tell you how many times it's like I get so frustrated with stuff because I see in my head the way things should be, and then I'm like, no one else gets this. Why?
Right.
Why?
I gotta say something. No one sees it. I gotta say something.
Yeah, exactly. Driving concept or idea may not be grounded in practical reality. I don't know about this one. I guess you could probably look at me and identify that in specific ways, but maybe this is a part of the definition of who this is, but like I don't feel any of the things I chase are like way out there, pie in the sky type stuff.
Yeah, but again,
someone probably could identify that.
This is where that whole modifier thing comes in.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, the others, like the top one, I feel like generally you're going to resonate with absolutely every detail of it, would be my guess.
Yeah.
And then as you go down, you tend to resonate with like 80% of it, and there's parts of it that aren't quite there. So I think that's part of what's going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other part here, only wanting to work on their own ideas and ensure that they are right, specifically the ensuring they are right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So that is experience the ideal.
That one can get messy sometimes, I feel like.
Oh, totally. Especially if you're not in a position where you are expected to be a visionary.
Sure. Yeah.
I think a lot of people who are running an organization, maybe they feel the responsibility to be a visionary. So reading this, I can see how I can be a threat to certain people, certain situations by acting on my visionary tendencies.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that one fits you pretty well, though. Like just having worked with you for a few years on Bookworm, it makes sense. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But in our case, I don't feel like any of the negative side has come out. I don't know if that's because of where I land on this, wanting to make sure things work, and I'm totally open to it. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be.
I'll say this. The visionary family, I thought I was going to have one or two out of that category because I tend to do a lot of the things that they mention, coming up with ideas, trying to figure out what the ideal is going to be and what's the absolute best way to run whatever. Like that's a lot of what I was expecting.
So on that topic real quickly,
I
read a Gap book a while back called Rocket Fuel, which is by the EOS guys. And they talk about like the best companies have a visionary and an integrator, they call it.
Okay.
And I, for a long time, thought that I am the integrator. I need to find my visionary and like find the right team and plug into that role. And so when I got this back and I have this, my second motivation is in the visionary family. I'm like,
yep.
Huh.
Now what do I do?
Well, it wasn't even like, now what do I do? But I recognize from reading this, and again, like, you can take it with a grain of salt, whether you really put stock in it or not. But my reaction when I read that is like, oh, I have been trying to suppress this, and I should not do that anymore.
Yeah. That's a really good way to say that, because collaborate and be central, I feel like those two, like what they are as far as like fitting in team settings, forever I've said that I like to go my own, like I like to be able to control everything around how I operate and what I'm doing, which is why I went down the self-employed route for so long. I've said that for years and years and years and years. And seeing how this is coming up, it makes me think that maybe I've known this somewhat. I've just been suppressing it unwittingly. And this is, I think, why I'm a bit like, okay, coming to grips with it, which is interesting because at the very beginning of the book, Todd Henry talks about when he was first introduced to this M code, this motivation code, as they refer to this, and how when he first took it and they walked him through it, it was like all sorts of light bulbs started going off. And he does mention in this that they're used to books being the type of thing, like people read them and it's like, oh, this changed my life. And then they read the next thing. It's like, oh, this one changed my life. And then they read the next, oh, that one changed my life. And it's like, I know that I tend to be prone to that sometimes, but as we're going through this, my tendency is to say like, this is got it nailed. But now I'm hesitant to say that. It's like, okay, how is this going to work long term? Is this just an initial reaction? I don't know. This is one of those that's like, it's kind of messed with me a little bit, and I'm not used to that with these books anymore. Usually it's like, okay, well, this fits into that paradigm, or this is where I think they're off, or this is how that one fits. This one I feel like is a bit jarring in that. So
it is, especially my third one.
Okay, which is what?
Overcome.
What?
It says your motivation focuses on overcoming and winning out over difficulties, disadvantages, or opposition. Determination, persistence, and a competitive spirit tend to be among your natural traits. You enjoy exerting a sustained, all-out effort to prevail over problems, difficulties, obstacles, handicaps, or adversaries. Your narrative may feature achievements like getting your degree while working full-time and supporting a family. Despite a painful injury, you might gut it out and perform well in an athletic contest. Both of those things have happened. You might strive to handle demanding job responsibilities despite a lack of experience, inadequate skill, or educational background. Perhaps there's a story where you work to prove the validity of an idea or plan of yours that others have scoffed at. You may have politicked heavily to overcome opposition to one of your proposals. In any case, you're motivated to struggle with the forces and factors working against you until you win out over them. Now, this one is interesting. It complements the first one that I shared, which was the Meet the Challenge. In the Meet the Challenge section, they always have in each one of these sections, they have a story about somebody. In this particular one, they talk about Will Smith and how he's going to die on the treadmill. And he basically says, we're going to get on a treadmill, and one of two things is going to happen. You're going to get off first, or I'm going to die. So overcome kind of fits that too. Some of the shadow side stuff here, always finding something else to overcome. You're not content with routine activities or the mundane. You have a high level of stress and pressure, which is often present in your life, strongly competitive, creating difficulties when none are present. It's almost like you have to manufacture an enemy to overcome. So this one and Meet the Challenge both have aspects of like, be careful, you like to work with a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So the big takeaway from having Rachel go through this is like, her reaction when she got done is like, wow, okay, so you kind of are going to naturally seek out this stress. So how can I help you with that?
Yes. Yeah.
Which was not the intention. I'm not giving it to her to be like, hey, this is why you need to help me.
Right.
But she read this and she's like, oh, I get why you keep ending up in those situations now.
It's because you're seeking them out.
Part of this is like, yeah, part of it is like, I got to recognize that, take some responsibility, and avoid that stuff where possible. But also, I think there's some validity in just recognizing that, like, this is who I am. So that stuff's going to be stressful. So what can I do with the other things I'm involved in, especially like home? How do I make that not stressful?
Yeah.
Or at least as the least amount of stress as possible, given that we've got 5 kids that we're homeschooling.
That's not stressful.
Not at all.
Though in today's culture, it's probably less stressful than it could be or would be.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think this is interesting. Okay, let me give you my third because there's some fascinating overlaps which may explain some of bookworm's longevity. My third one here is demonstrate new learning. Now, this one I got right away. So when I was posing my original 3, this was one that I thought was way up there. Now, at least from the learner group. But demonstrate new learning, quick learner, which, yeah, a generalist, which the way they're using this term and the way they explain it, it would probably fit into the realm of multi-potentialite, to use that term from, a different book. Strong synthesizer, very good at like determining what other people are saying without them saying it. The flip side of this, they find it difficult to commit to a career. They're a jack of all trades and master of none. They come across as a know-it-all. Do I come across as a know-it-all? I hope not. They want to appear competent even when they aren't. That one I definitely try to do and shouldn't. So this one's very obvious to me because I will dive in head first on something brand new, figure out how it all works, and then I want to go on to the next thing, and I'm done with it. And I do this over and over and over again. You see this from me regularly if you followed me for 3 seconds online. So that's, you start putting these together, and this is what I was talking about earlier. Collaborate from the team player grouping. Be central as a key contributor. Demonstrate new learning from the learner category. Combine that with your side of things, Mike. You get 2 of them from the achiever group, meet the challenge. The visionary side, experiencing the ideal and overcoming.
Yep.
Between the 2 of us, we've got a pretty good collection across these families. Yeah, the only one we don't have is optimizer.
So we need to find an optimizer? Is that what you're saying?
We need to find an optimizer, and then we'll be golden.
Now, regarding your demonstrate new learning one, when I read that in the descriptions, I obviously thought of How to Be Everything by Emily Wapnick and the definition of a multi-potentialite. And I was a little bit offended I didn't get this one, to be honest.
Because you felt like you resonated
when
with
I read it,
that
I'm like,
really
oh, that's
well.
totally me.
Yep.
Yeah, and then no.
So the 3 that I thought I was going to be, the first was experience the ideal. I thought that was one that I was going to be, just because I have a tendency to come up what is the best case scenario for things. Like, what is the ultimate, most effective, most efficient way for things to run? Like, that is something I feel like I do a lot, but it didn't make the list at all. Demonstrate new learning was there. Like, I really thought that was one that I was going to fit into. I didn't pick that specific one. I picked the comprehend and express. But again, I think that those 2, that's why I struggled. Like, I feel like they were very similar to each other. The other one that I had written down was organize from the optimizer grouping, which wasn't on the radar either. And that was because I have a tendency to want to put things in their place and make sure they have a place and stuff. But as I've thought about it, it's like, okay, I like to make sure that things have a place. But if you were to look at my desk, you would see that I am not one who keeps them there. So everything has a place.
Sure.
It's just not there. So I don't think that actually fits. In my head, that's where I land, but that's not it at all. And this is why I think this is either genius and it's spot on, and this is something we need to put a lot of weight on, or it's way off. And I don't think it's the latter of those. So this is why I'm still processing on this, which is weird. Because again, this is like, I'm instant when it comes to processing things like this. So
yeah,
I don't know. Thoughts?
I didn't have like a 3 that I thought I was going to be, but I did expect the demonstrate new learning to show up, because that's basically what bookworm is. It's like you learn
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
you talk about it, and you solidify it in your brain.
Yep.
I was a little bit shocked that I didn't get really anything from those families. I do think it'd be interesting to see how, and I understand why they're saying just look at the top 3, but I'm sure that there is some sort of influence with all of these. In the full version, they give you your scores for all of the different themes. And what's interesting about this is that, like, I start with Meet the Challenge and I average like a 10 score on that. Experience the Ideal, 9.3. Overcome, 9.2. Be Unique is 9.2 also. Bring it to Completion is 9.0. The lowest one is Influence Behavior at 6.4, where I actually registered a rating, and then Make the Grade is 0. So I think that might be more telling than any of the other stuff. Is
Sure.
like, I don't really care what people think. I am not trying to seek anybody's approval.
I'm going to do what I'm going to do.
So I think there's a lot of insight to be gained from this, but
Yeah, you have me intrigued on the full one at this point, but I'm having a hard time getting my head around these top 3 just by itself. So that's the one that I'm still like, okay, like just that piece is one that I'm processing. So seeing the rest of it, I feel like would maybe either clarify it or muddy it, one of the two. Not real sure, but
it depends what you want to do with this. You know, if your reaction is maybe there's something here and I want to understand it better, I'd say spend the $50, watch the videos, get the full report. There's also, with the full report, they give you the in-depth analysis of your top motivations. They give you a development plan, which I'll just go through this real quickly. There's a couple different exercises. So the first one, they say, own your motivation code. And what you're supposed to do is take this report and highlight in green everything that accurately describes your actions and motivations, highlight in yellow anything that moderately resonates with you, and highlight in red all the things that don't apply to you at all.
okay.
So I haven't done that, but I can see how going through that, you might see, oh yeah, there's actually a bunch of green here. So while I initially thought this was a bunch of hooey, actually, now that I think about this a little more, maybe there's something here.
Sure.
And then they say to create your motivation statement. This is kind of getting into part 3. So I don't know if we want to talk about that.
Yeah,
right
no,
now.
that's fine.
Okay.
I'm totally game to go there.
Because part 3 is actually where my one action item comes from, having gone through the full assessment. And that is to create your motivation statement. And this is basically like you're filling in some blanks. And it's a little bit more involved in the actual report. In the book, it's just a couple of blanks that you're filling in. In the report, you identify your top 3 motivations, the words that resonate from exercise 1, where you highlighted things. And then you create your own integrated motivation statement. I'm fundamentally motivated to blank as I blank and blank. All right. And this is all kind of formatted pretty nicely. And then you identify your motivational energy, where you write down activities you're highly motivated to do. And then you go back to your profile and shows your themes. And then in column 2, you kind of write down the themes that correspond to the things that you like doing in both energizing and draining activities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. And then the last exercise is to identify the shadow side, where you got your motivations, and then what are the issues that you face associated with these motivations. We kind of talked through a bunch of those already. Like for me, a big one is stress. Okay. But this is where you would codify that stuff. So there's a lot of really cool stuff, I think, that you can use this stuff to, a lot of insights you can glean from following through and doing this all the way. But I also can see people doing that and being like, well, that was a waste of time.
Yeah. Going through this last part here, essentially what you're trying to do is put together a plan.
Yep.
For what to do about it, which is spot on. It's exactly what they should be saying here. And one of the pieces, I noticed you wrote this in the outline, I wanted to bring this up as well, but they talk about the differences between clean and dirty fuel, motivation fuel. And the way that they explain this is, if you think about dirty fuels like coal or wood, even when you burn them, you're left with ash or soot. That's a dirty fuel. In the same way, you have dirty motivation fuel. Basically, if you're using a motivator that's not in your top grouping of motivators, say some people are motivated by finances, and that's fine. Say it's a challenge that they are there to meet and they want to achieve those finances. They may be driven by that. That's not me. So that particular motivator is a dirty motivating fuel because it leaves behind it anger, resentment, frustration, disengagement. It's going to leave a lot of these negatives behind it if you have the wrong motivator. But if you nail it, if you have a clean motivation fuel, the byproduct of that would be passion in this case, where you're just absolutely on fire for the thing you're doing. So that was maybe the gal I talked to doing my COVID test. So it's like, okay, let's tone it down a bit. You're overwhelming me here. So maybe that's the ADD. I just can't handle that. So, that's another thing too. So that was a piece that I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, the way that they explain that. So I think that was a really good analogy that they put together there at the end. So I was grateful for that. It kind of gave me a clean way of thinking this, no pun intended.
That's interesting. I got something a little bit different from the clean and dirty stuff, but maybe that's just linked to my motivations, because remember, I'm meeting the challenge and I'm overcoming.
All right.
So
I'm just trying to learn something new.
The stuff that I jotted down from this section, he talks about how all fuels have byproducts. And there is this thing called an against motivation, which is probably very naturally inclined to a couple of mine, where it's like me against the world.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show them wrong. They said I couldn't do this thing, and for that reason alone, I'm going to kill myself for the next 10 years so that I can show up one day and say, ha, I did it.
Yep.
A great example of this. Have you ever watched Michael Jordan's Hall of Fame acceptance speech?
No, but I've heard about it.
It is so bitter, and he basically kept tabs on everybody that he ever felt slighted by, and he called them all out in his Hall of Fame speech. It's really uncomfortable to watch, but that's the picture that I had in my mind as he's talking about this against motivation and the negative emotional byproducts that come with that. Because you watch something like that and you're just like, what a sad, bitter old man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I don't want to be that guy. So the big takeaway for me is to work for something, not against something.
Right. Right.
And the idea of passion here, this is coming from the previous book that I had read by Todd Henry, which is Die Empty, which I really, really enjoyed. That book, he talks about the word passion coming from the Latin word pati, and it literally means to suffer. So following your passion really doesn't mean do what you love. It means what are you willing to suffer to see come about because you care about it so much. And he even says in this book that following your suffering doesn't have the same ring as following your passion. But that's really what it is. And that's why you make a motivation statement.
Yeah.
Because you identify what you are really passionate about, what you're willing to go through some difficulty and overcome some things, not just because that's who you are motivated. Though now that I have taken this, I see where my perspective on this whole idea of passion, why that really resonates with me. But I think with all of these motivations, regardless of where you land, this is an important aspect here, is that it's not just going to be fun all the time. And
right.
The motivation is going to kick in when you have that connection to where you really want to be and why this is really important to you and where you're going to end up, what you're going to get out of this, whether that is, you've passed the finish line and you finished the thing, or just you had a really great time collaborating with somebody. I don't know. Not trying to pick on your motivations.
No, go for it.
But I think if you are solidly one of these, it can be difficult to understand where other people are coming from, which is why as you go through these sections and he talks about how do you work with somebody who falls in these categories, that is absolute gold.
Yeah.
because you're not going to just always know the best way to do something based on how you're wired. And you can't just say like, well, work my way, even if you are the boss.
Yeah. And that honestly, this is a thing, this isn't going to qualify as an action item, I think, for Bookworm, but my intention is to at least glance through that part for yours.
Sure.
Just so I can figure out, like, okay, Mike wants to meet the challenge. Do I need to give him challenges? I don't know. Like, what does that mean? So, maybe that improves our working relationship. I don't know. But that's at least a thing that I wanted to consider. It is definitely a thing I've debated having my wife take this quiz just to see, where does she land on this? And then we could have this conversation. But she doesn't like taking quizzes like this. She's like, just let me go do my thing. So
she totally should. Rachel took it. I forget what 3 she had, but they were very different again.
Yeah.
So apparently I seek out people who are not like me at all.
Maybe that's why Rachel and I get along.
That could be. Interestingly, I think there is a place for this type of assessment where you have 2 people take it and then you draw insights from those results and how they compare.
Yeah.
We did that with the Kolbe. There's like a relationship version of the Kolbe assessment where you identify that someone's a high follow through, someone's a high quick start. So where are the points in your relationship where that's going to produce friction, and how do you kind of maximize your strengths working together?
Yeah.
And that report, when we took it, it's called the Take Two assessment. I'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Okay.
But that one was really interesting to go through, and it was just as in depth as this 22-page thing that I got for going through the $50 one here. So I think that would be fascinating if they do develop this in the future, to add an aspect of like, okay, so I'm this and someone else is this. How do we reconcile it?
Yeah, that's true. But I feel like that'd be a whole nother book.
It could be.
Like, again, this is dense. So
yeah, when I got done with this, I looked at the research, I looked at what they got with the full version. I feel like they're just on the tip of the iceberg with this. And that's why I said at the beginning, maybe this turns into something like the Strengths Finder, and this is a common thing, because I think it totally could be that. I think understanding your motivation, that's kind of unique in that whole area of like self-assessment, but definitely there's a lot of potential value there. But I also feel like this is still in the beginning stages, and it's got to grow up a bit before we understand what this is really going to be.
At the same time, I'm still jarred by it and still having a hard time refuting it. Like, I've legit tried, because I don't think of myself as a team player. So the fact that comes out number 1, like, I'm going to find how this is wrong. When I first saw that, I'm going to read through this and I'm going to point out all the reasons this is wrong. I even in my drafts note that I quick took for it and then ended up in my notebook, I had written "it's off," and started number 1, and I was ready to type the next thing. It's like, okay, here's why it's off. And it's still blank. So I haven't come up with anything. I'm trying, but I haven't come up with anything yet.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's basically the book. Should we talk about action items?
Yep.
The only one I've got here is to create the motivation statement, but actually I'm going to modify that to go through the 4 exercises that are in the full version of my report. So that's part of those 4 exercises, but I'll report back on all of them if you want me to, or I can just share my motivation statement like they talk about on page, what is that, 222, I think, is where they have that one.
Sure.
So I wrote it down in my MindNode file, my giant MindNode file.
Is this the biggest one you've done?
No, Principles was the biggest.
Oh, that's right. That one was massive.
Principles broke MindNode because I kept attaching images and it ended up like a gigabyte in size.
World's largest MindNode file.
Exactly. I do think now that you've shared yours, I am going to go back and look at those sections too and just kind of figure out, how do I work with Joe better? Not that there's even like issues. I think like you said, there's a lot of synergy between our motivation styles, which interestingly, by the way, there doesn't necessarily have to be with different styles. So like if you prefer to work with people, I prefer to be left alone.
Yep.
Those aren't necessarily going to complement each other.
Right.
But I feel like with Bookworm, it kind of does.
Yeah.
You're right with that.
And part of that, I think, is just because we're not, like, it's not a full-time.
Yep. True.
It's a part-time thing. So I think there's maybe some component of that there. I don't know. It's interesting. So as far as action items go, I don't have anything written down. And it's because I'm not sure what to do with it yet. And again, I've said this a few times, like I'm in this weird spot where I'm used to processing things very quickly, but this one has thrown me off. And I think it's because I've got probably a decade worth of thinking headed down one direction that this is flipping on its head. And that's why I'm a bit like, what? So I'm trying to like potentially reverse multiple years of thinking here, but I'm not sure I should be. So again, I'm not going to put this as an action item, but I think I'm just going to discuss this with my wife, talk through this with Becky, and see, if she agrees with these things, then I'm likely to put a lot more weight on it.
Yeah.
And that may tell me what I should be doing. I've been tweaking who's doing what in my current role to alleviate me from some tasks to help me move over to others. Like there's a bit of a transition going on right now. So it would be good timing in that sense. So I need to talk through this one, which is not something I'm used to having to say.
Sure.
So again, this one's weird to me, which is going to get even harder if we're going to rate this thing. So you go first. I don't have to go first on this. You go.
Okay, this is so hard because again, this is not a Bookworm style book. I would not ever pick StrengthsFinder for Bookworm, but that's basically what I did by picking this one.
Good job, Mike. Proud of you.
So I have to differentiate between the book from the Bookworm perspective and the assessment. And I feel the assessment and what you can glean from going through that is pretty cool. I am glad that I paid the $50 for the big one. I wasn't really that impressed with the free one, but I feel a lot better about the whole message that they're communicating by looking at the full product that they're trying to ultimately point people to. So, assessment 5.0. But now let's talk about the book.
All right.
The book, it's hard because I like the assessment to say anything negative about the book, but I really didn't enjoy it as a book very much. I was expecting a lot of talk about motivation, the concept, and that was just the first chapter, basically. The next chapter, they were on to explaining the assessment. At that point in the book, I felt very duped, to be honest.
Sure. So then here's a question then. Because the book is so dependent on the assessment, can you rate the book without the assessment?
That's what I am attempting to do. Yeah.
But should you? That's the question.
I don't know.
That's the hard part here. It's like rating StrengthsFinder without having taken the test. Like, how do you do that?
It's true, but with StrengthsFinder, even with that, I would say take the assessment, pay the money, don't even bother with the book other than to get the code to take the test.
Sure, yeah.
There is no code to take the test. You can go to motivationcode.com/free and take the free version of this test. There is no reason for you to go back and read this book. What you are left with, if you take the free version of the assessment, is your top 3 motivations, which you can then go back and read those 10 pages and get limited value from that. Okay? I don't think any of the 27 sections that they talk about here really jump out to you the way that the full assessment results do. So even if you did that, you're not really getting the full picture. And so with that, like, why even bother?
Sure, yeah.
I don't need more homework to do. I'm not trying to remember all 27 of these motivations. So if you're like cranking through a book like we do in Bookworm,
Yep.
you get to the end, especially if you're taking notes like I did in a MindNote file, and you're like, that was exhausting and kind of pointless. From a Bookworm perspective, the parts I really enjoyed, chapter 1, and then the section where he's talking about passion at the end. But again, like that's not new. I read that in the previous Todd Henry book.
Yep.
So from a book perspective, I think this is honestly 2.5 stars.
Okay.
Now, I just spent an hour and a half talking about how great the assessment is. So I do think, like, as a sales tool, well done, Todd Henry.
Yes. This is why I was asking if you could split the two.
I don't know. I think from a Bookworm perspective, you kind of, it's my interpretation of this. It's our responsibility to do that. Like, people come to Bookworm. Why did they come to Bookworm? Because they're looking for the next book to read. They want to know what's worth their time. Don't spend your time reading this one. Spend your time, if you really like the idea of motivation and you believe that there's a lot of validity behind this particular assessment, which I can't even say because, like I said, they link to the science and there isn't a whole lot there. But if you can get past that for yourself and you want to research this for yourself, take the assessment. Well, number one, if you don't want to spend any money, take the free assessment and then go back and read just those sections. If you do want to really understand this stuff, which I fall into that category, you don't even need the book at all. Just go to themotivationcode.com, take the $50 assessment and watch the videos and whatever else in the full report, follow those exercises. So I like the fact that we went through this. I like the discussion that we had about the topic.
Yeah.
But the book itself, I feel, has been measured and found wanting.
But towards the end, he does say that one of the things you need to do is process this with somebody.
Yep, that's true.
Like talk
that's
through
true.
it with somebody. So,
but you got to go through the assessment in order to do that. You can't just read the book and talk about it. This is a terrible
Correct.
book club book. This is a podcast book club. This is not the right arena for this.
Yeah. So I'm having a hard time because I hear you on trying to break the book away from the assessment, but I'm having a hard time doing that because the impact that the book has had on me would not have happened without the assessment, and I would have focused on the wrong things going through the book.
Yep.
So if I'm rating the book, I think without the assessment, I think you're right. I would have gone down the wrong path with it without the assessment. But they do call out. It's like, we want you to stop and we want you to go take this.
Yep.
So
you can rate the experience. That's fine. You don't have to isolate the book like I did.
Yeah, I don't know. Like that's posing a question about how Bookworm ratings work that I'm not sure I was prepared to endeavor upon.
Yeah.
So,
well, to be honest, when I got to the section where they asked us to take the assessment, I was like, oh man,
yeah,
maybe I should reach out to Joe and say, you want to do something else instead.
Sure. But I'm glad to have gone through this though.
Yep, me too.
Like, I'm very happy that I did this. From an overall experience stance, if I were to make the assumption, okay, here, I'm going to make a couple assumptions, okay? Number one, I'm rating this based on the experience that the book delivers, okay? Which means you have to take the assessment into conjunction when you're looking at the entirety of this. That's assumption number one. Assumption number two is that what I'm getting from taking the assessment and learning about it is solid and actually stands up over time.
Mm-hmm.
If those two things are true, I think I would put this at a 5, which is weird to say. I'm not going to put it at a 5 because I'm conflicted at the moment because I don't know what that I don't have what that long term is. So I don't know, when we get to episode 200, maybe we revise this one. I don't know, but I don't know if I can separate the assessment from this just because I know that it would not have struck me the way it did if I hadn't taken that. But again, you're absolutely correct. If you split that assessment from it and you just read the book, it's going to be a bit confusing a little bit because of those subtleties between them. That's one major complaint that I've had with this, is that because some of those groupings and those motivational themes, even within some of the families, have such similar explanations and pros and cons, it's a bit washy on which one you would say is yours if you didn't take that assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And it would make me wonder, like, what's the difference between saying it's one versus like A versus B inside the back mathematical model on that assessment. I wonder how far apart some of these are. Some of them I'm sure it's quite wide, but I'm betting some of these it's quite narrow, which would make me wonder about the definitions and how they've gone defining some of these. So, that's some of the complaints I have with it. Those subtleties aren't made clear. But at the same time, I think that you might be correct. Having not done the full assessment, the paid version of it, it makes me wonder if doing that, skip the book and do that would make more sense. Now, granted, you're talking about a 2 to 3-fold expense versus reading the book and doing the free version. So I kind of want to tell folks, like, if you're interested in this process, buy the book, do the free one, and then if you want to go in depth, then do the full-blown. Part of me wants to say that.
So on that topic specifically, let me address that, because they're following the StrengthsFinder model, but StrengthsFinder is a better deal because what you get when you buy the StrengthsFinder book is a code to use the paid assessment, but it only gives you your top 5 areas or something like that.
Yeah.
But it gives you the content that you need to learn something from those 5 areas. And that's an added value to the book that you've already paid for. With this book, you pay $20, whatever, it comes in the mail. Then you find out there's a free assessment, and it's like they designed the free assessment through the lens of no one's paid anything for this yet.
Yeah.
But you don't even know about the free assessment until you've already paid for the book. So what you get from the free assessment is not really anything. And you got to go back and read the book yourself in order to draw any sort of conclusions. I wish they would have given like the descriptions of the different areas like I got with the paid version in the free version and made that like a light version that they charge $10 for. And they give you a code in the book. I feel like that produces a much more palatable upsell for them from buying the book to the full assessment.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. It makes me wonder how they got to where they are. I can easily see like the full assessment you're talking about because of the extras that you're talking about. It totally is worth more than a free code from the book. So that I totally understand. I don't think they're wrong in the dollar amount that they've put on things. But if you were like, for example, when you take the free one, it's just a 3-bullet list. It tells you absolutely nothing about those. So if I were to take that test,
a cover page and one additional page,
yeah,
with 3 icons on it.
It literally only said collaborate, be central, demonstrate new learning. That is all it said. There was no this. It didn't even tell me what family that was from.
Exactly.
It just told me those 3 titles, and that was it. So when we say when you take the test, all you're getting is those 3, that is it. That I'm not exaggerating that.
It's weak sauce.
So how to rate this? And beating around the bush because I don't know what to do. Because again, it's like, how do you... All right, so from a book stance, if I'm separating it from the assessment, and again, you're going to take that if you buy the book. So I don't know that if you were to buy this and not... the type of person who would buy this and not take the assessment, I don't know what type of person that is. It's not me, but because I put the book down for 2 days while I waited to take the assessment because I didn't have the 30 minutes to drop into it. Because I would normally read in like 5 and 10 minute spacings between things. That's when I do a lot of my reading. So to sit down and do a 30-minute, I have to make sure I've got time set aside for that. So whenever I did do that, it was worth it. So I think a lot of people are going to do that. Assuming that this is solid and there's not some underlying fundamental flaw that I'm missing, I think I'm going to put this at a 4. I'm going to put it at a 4.0. I don't think I can go and just completely divorce the assessment. I'm having a very hard time doing that mentally. But again, some of my qualms are the subtleties between some of these sub-themes. not really understanding what the broader scope of things are directly from the book without having to spend an extra $50. Some of those things start to get to be a bit odd as far as the overall experience, if you want to look at it from that stance. So, even if today not having that long-term understanding and solidifying things, I don't think I could in any way say this is a 5.0 today. I think maybe in a year's time, I might say that. From an overall experience, I probably still wouldn't revise it after a year, though. But I don't know. I'll quit beating around the bush. I'll say it's a 4.0, and I'll stay there.
All right. Cool. Let's put the motivation code on the shelf. What's next?
Yeah, so the next one, we talked about this last time. So last time we recorded, this one had been released only by 2-3 days, something like that.
Yeah.
And this is The Practice by Seth Godin, Shipping Creative Work. And I don't have this in my hands yet because I'm a slacker and ordered it late. And we'll have it in my hands on Monday. But it sounds very intriguing. I'm a big Seth Godin fan, so I think this will be a fun one to go through. Have we covered a Seth Godin book before?
I'm not sure that we have.
Which is weird.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't recall covering a Seth Godin book. I know that I've read a couple. I have Purple Cow in front of me, but I don't think we've actually covered a Seth Godin book, which might be a sin that we need to rectify here.
It's going to be remedied shortly.
So anyway, that one's up next. What did you finally land on for after that?
Well, after that, we've got the anti-Seth Godin. So Seth Godin is an easy read, typically. Crank through those pretty quickly. Series of short essays. This book looks a lot like that. But then after that, I have a book which I had pre-ordered the new version of, and I want to go through. It is 544 pages. And so I asked you before we started recording if you were cool with this. And you said yes.
But only because we're covering Seth Godin first.
Exactly. So after that, we are going to read Bowling Alone, The Collapse and Revival of American Community. And this was a book, I believe we first heard about this when we recorded the Author's Corner episode with Nir Eyal. I've had a couple people bring it up since then. And yeah, this is going to be a big one. I know not what to expect from this. I think it's a topic that is going to be interesting and not the type of thing that we would normally cover on Bookworms. So for people who want us to break out of our productivity self-help box, here you go.
You haven't selected Sapiens yet. Chat's pointing it out.
I haven't. I'm willing to, especially after Brainwash referenced it. But yeah, this one I want to read more. So dragging you along with me.
All right. How about a Gap book? You got one in between?
I have a Gap book right here, but I am not going to even pick it up and read it because Bowling Alone is so big. So no Gap book this time.
All right. I'm the same. So no, I don't have any Gap books. I probably should, given Thanksgiving is coming and I'm taking a week off, but no, I don't.
You can start reading Bowling Alone.
I know. I think that's what I'm going to end up doing. Hustle through Seth Godin, take a bunch of notes, pick up Bowling Alone, and be halfway done with it before we record Seth Godin's book.
The timing of this one specifically is kind of interesting for me because we're in the middle of all this COVID stuff. So
yeah,
we're not doing all the in-person stuff that we would normally do. And so kind of the thought process behind this is, number one, how do we mitigate what's happening and like do what we can? And number two, when things go back to normal, what should it look like? Quote unquote, back to normal.
Quote unquote. People love it when we say quote unquote.
It's true. All right, we've been talking way too much. Let's wrap this up.
Okay.
Thank you to everybody who supports the show, either by attending the live recording as we are doing right now on Twitch, or especially if you are willing to support the show and pitch in a couple bucks every month to help us keep the lights on. If you want to sign up to become a Bookworm Club premium member, it's $5 a month, $50 a year. You can go to bookworm.fm/membership, I believe. There'll be a link in the show notes, and you will get access to all of the MindNode files that I create for the books that we read, including the ginormous one for this particular book. You get a fancy wallpaper I designed and a couple other bonuses. But really, you get our undying gratitude. We really do appreciate everybody who is willing to monetarily support the show. That means a lot to both Joe and myself. So thank you, everybody.
For sure. I did shorten some things for us to make it easier, though. Bookworm.fm/membership takes you to the club and takes you where you need to go. And then if you want to catch us live, if you ever catch the tweets and stuff and we're going to record live, bookworm.fm/live. It'll redirect, both of those will redirect you where you need to be because, I like to demonstrate new learning. So there you are. So if you're following along with us, pick up The Practice by Seth Godin. We'll cover it next time, and hopefully we'll learn how to be more creative. Thanks, team.